So, leveling up your character to level 100 and completing the battle pass will take roughly 80 hours in Diablo 4. There's so many new details being revealed for the game, and today we have a bunch more about seasonal content, endgame, quality of life stuff, and more we'll dive in just a bit. Also, quick reminder, I'm giving away a copy of Diablo 4 Digital Deluxe Edition. All you have to do is to be a subscriber of the channel, hit the like button, and comment below the one thing you're most excited for in this game. Let's jump right into the new info for the seasonal updates, and according to this recent Game Informer interview, Diablo 4's post-launch quarterly updates will consist of additional story content that will be tied into the new mechanics and features of each update. These will additionally be accompanied by a new seasonal battle pass, which comes both in a free as well as a premium form. We of course know that Diablo 4's battle pass will cost around $10, but that's for the premium version. You also have the free one. We also had confirmation that the game's first season will not go live with the game's launch, but rather sometimes later after that. But in a tweet posted like a few hours later, Blizzard clarified what the stories they referred to in the Game Informer article mean, which are basically new quest lines that help provide context to new seasonal mechanics and not a completely new campaign. The gist of the seasonal update is that they all have a specific theme, and along that theme there will be story content to support it. The slice of story content will also be temporary in these and only playable during that season it relates to, which is basically how it's always worked. Meanwhile, when it comes to expanding the actual story of Diablo 4 after its conclusion at the end of the main campaign, Blizzard's plan is to make that content persistent and available to all players at all times, which is why it would be done via an expansion rather than a new season. Something they actually confirmed officially via a different interview for MMORPG.com. That being said, they also gave us some details on how the battle pass will work and how much it takes to complete. Long story short, progressing through the battle pass is done by completing all manners of in-game activities that will earn you favor either from quests, killing monsters, or completing objectives in the seasonal journey, which is going to have different activities each season. So basically about the same as it was in Diablo 3. In fact, we've got some official numbers of how long that will take, which according to this PC Gamer article, you're looking at roughly 80 hours worth of time invested to complete the entirety of the battle pass. To level a character to level 100, even more so, could take a little bit longer than that based on how you actually play, and it's likely that you'll even finish the battle pass before reaching the max level each season. Interesting enough, according to a different interview for Push Square, once you completed the campaign, you can skip straight past it with any of your additional characters that you decide to run with. In doing so, you'll be able to jump directly into the open world according to this preview with all the endgame content in place. Though Blizzard has not clarified how that will work like in terms of actual level scaling and difficulty settings, just that you won't have to replay the campaign every time you try a new class. I'm not sure if this means mechanics like boosting your additional characters or maybe scaling down some of the endgame content to be available to low-level players or maybe some other tactic, but they did mention that they've added systems in place to avoid making the game feel too repetitive in certain areas. Moving on though, since seasonal content is all the buzz now, we have a lot of clarifications coming via the Korean news outlet called Invan on some of the other stuff adjacent to it. So keep in mind these are all rough translations and things might be different, but one key highlight was about the altars of Lilith persisting through seasonal resets. So one of the interviewers asks this: it was announced during the game's development that a hard reset would carry out every season. Does everything related to the renown and power obtained from dungeons also fall under the reset criteria, or are there any exceptions? To which Blizzard replied that they do indeed carry out hard resets every season, however the stats obtained from the altars of Lilith will not be included in this criteria. Given that altars are tied to all characters, they will be permanently tied to them according to the same interview. Meanwhile, stuff like potions and skill points will be reset, and I would assume maybe the Codex of Power too, though this could make some sense to also be in the same criteria as the altars of Lilith. Additionally, various tools will be prepared to make the reputation system feel as non-repetitive as possible, but I believe that there is a translation error here from Google Chrome, but other sites did report this correctly. Anyway, what happens if the content becomes too vast, as new seasons gradually add accumulating content that for newcomers it can feel like a burden, and how is the team planning to address that? This was another question. So we want to provide fresh and immersive content added each season. Seasonal content may only be available for that specific season. We may bring back previous season content while also adding new one without overwhelming players. Additionally, we want to reduce the burden so that accumulating content does not become a barrier for new or returning players. So yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable. The way they basically want to counter this is to not re-bring back all of these new mechanics they introduce every single season, but rather alternate through them and possibly sometimes kind of combine them, previous seasons with new ones, and adding the content from both of those at the same time, depending, I guess, also how the player base reacts to all of these. These are all things that will eventually change as Blizzard is gathering a lot more data when the game launches. In the meantime, the Game Informer article has some other interesting mechanics being revealed, including 2 new affixes we'll encounter in the Nightmare dungeons. So one such affix will see an invincible pillar of lightning constantly chase players throughout the dungeon, while another will add a shade that also follows players and, if touched, will obscure their vision and summon additional enemies. Not going to lie, these sound a lot more interesting than the data mined percentage buffs or debuffs that we have seen before, and kind of looking forward to other similar mechanics that kind of do make you feel that chase, that you're running around having to take down all these enemies while having to worry about all the things that the dungeon tries in order to take you down. In fact, from the same article, Blizzard confirmed that the dungeon design, though disappointing to some in the open beta, was very restricted to a limited zone and a limited number of examples existing just to the level cap of 25. However, in the full game, they mention we have prepared more diverse dungeons, layouts, and monsters that players will encounter. Nightmare dungeons will also play a significant role in providing a differentiated dungeon experience. These dungeons are longer than regular ones and bosses have unique mechanics. Sign me up for that. I do like to see bosses with different interesting mechanics than the ones encountered in the base game, and there's other like similar mentions you'll see in a bit for some of the other side content. Now, more details have also been shared on the Helltides, the endgame open world events that spawn higher level enemies as well as better loot drops. So one includes the fact that multiple areas of the open world can be affected by these Helltide events at once, but these will persist for a limited time only, which means you will have to be rather quick to complete them before jumping into any remaining ones, and maybe even juggle between them as you try to complete more and more. And not just deadlier enemies spawn inside of them, but also remixed versions of various bosses from other parts of the game, which again I found really cool. It's probably not going to be like a super vast or completely unrecognized version of that, but still I appreciate the steps Blizzard is taking to combat the game's more repetitive nature. Again, in none of these you have or are restricted to complete the content only with a certain number of players. It's been confirmed that all the content can also be done solo, though I imagine stuff like the world bosses might require a much better build. We've already seen that being possible in the open beta too, which is level 25 builds. So I mean, at the end game it's probably going to look a lot different. But on a final note, there's also the question of PvP, and let's be honest, Blizzard added some nice incentives for you to go in and actually do it, even if PvP is not really your thing. So one of the questions were, it seems that as the character's power increase, will it be possible to achieve what is commonly called a one-hit kill? Will there be a separation of PvP and PvE items in the future, or the addition of a separate system such as options or skills just for PvP? To which the answer was, well, we are considering various options to prevent certain characters or skills from becoming too powerful and being able to defeat opponents with just one hit. We currently do not have any plans for specific items or attributes for PvP. Overall, the PvP content itself may not be perfectly balanced. This is because it is an open world combat experience. Diablo 4's PvP is not just for honor, but for the sake of slaughter too. And not gonna lie, I kinda like that last statement, just for the sake of slaughter. Yes, they even recognize it's not going to be perfectly balanced. They're probably not even going to try to do so, at least not at launch. But this is not going to mean everything will one-shot you every single time. I'm not going to keep my hopes too high in the early stages, at least. Once we finally reach the end game, maybe at least for a few months after the game launches, I would assume there's at least a few one-shotting builds in the game, just judging by what we've seen from, well, the open betas thus far. But it's nice to see that even Blizzard recognizes that and will take some steps to prevent some of that in the future. Which is more important, of course? Another question in PvP, is it the character build, the items, or the player skill? Well, according to the response they gave, it seems to be a combination of all of these. Skill, item synergies, and your character build will all play a huge role into all of this. But of course, they recognize that items are not useless. If you really have a powerful legendary or a unique item, they will also produce meaningful results. So expect maybe like your build to completely change around if you're constantly getting like destroyed by other players, to maybe give you some new powers that are going to make you able to compete with these and equally be as deadly as they are towards you. That, or just make the ones that are already deadly even worse than before, but I guess we'll get to see that really soon in, well, just a couple more months. But this is pretty much it with the info. There's gonna be a lot more coming up in the following days and weeks, so I'm gonna keep you guys updated with everything Diablo related. If you wanna stay tuned with that, definitely leave a like on the video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one.